Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Intelligence Report, Human, Video Games, written by AdjutantStormy. Tensagron had been ordered, read at gunpoint, to produce another report on human cultural strategic aptitudes. Command was not yet satisfied, so if this enclosed report was not to Command's liking, his next mission may be the one he is not meant to return from. Tensagron had been doing a species equivalent of sweating, panting, as they did not possess dermal sweat cooling. He was on Terran Hour 19 of reviewing these video games, a tradition of computer simulations dating back to their second millennium of their calendar. The feats of manipulation, strategy, and pure, unmitigated, uncensored slaughter had his entire physiology in panic. Tensagron took a few moments to step away from his computer, making a cup of what Terrans would call tea, a melange of herbs steeped with very hot water. In his case, a calming mix of herbs from his homeworld designed for patience and reduced heart rate. Focus. He needed focus. Unlike his previous reports, this one would be filmed for judgment by Command to see if Tensagron had unduly exaggerated his findings. For my report, I will divide these Terran video games into 4 categories, from least concerning to most. He took a soothing sip from his tea and steeled himself alongside a fortified bomb. He looked back at the camera. The first category will be with the ARPG, or Action Role-Playing Games. Your typical ARPG has a player, in this case a Terran, face off against regularly insurmountable odds as they control a single warrior against hundreds of times their number in enemies. The character will inevitably fall, yes, but even from a weakened initial state, they will acquire additional physical skill in the attempt, as well as the rewards for their perseverance. This is not unlike our recruitment on Zephyr Prime. For our green-blooded, survive your training, you graduate to knife and pistol. Survive your first deployment, and you've earned a rifle and armor. Be granted veterancy, you may have your own command vehicle. But this is not a military blood sport. This is a simulation for entertainment. These humans accidentally know our promotion system, ergo, how to use it against us. Taking a moment to have some more tea, Tensagron returned to his video. These players do not at all suffer again and again for their promotion. The Terran video games often have what they called hacks and cheat codes, whereby unblooded players may skip the line of experience and acquire the arms of greater compatriot. Worse yet, these promotions are commonly purchased with currency. Read pay to win. Yet, when competitive comparisons can be made, the most veterans may be beaten every challenge on their own merits, a dozen times over. There are ARPGs of sword and shield combat. There are those of aerial dogfights. There are those of pure magical fantasy. The masters of the genre have reflexes to rival our best interceptor pilots. Cue footage. A 20-minute montage of dodge rolling in Dark Souls. Next is the genre that I will acknowledge is the turn-based tactical RPG. These involve the players commanding a squad of individuals of usually different ranks and talents, set upon by an enemy of equal or traditionally greater numbers, often tasked with a specific goal in an environment of hostiles. The number of games in this genre exceed description. Whilst the ARPG requires reflex and attentiveness of a pilot, the turn-based tactical RPG takes off where ARPGs left off. You have a handful of specialists. You must make masterful use of each man's talents, or you fail the objective at best. Or you all die at worst. Any offshoot of the Humans Rules framework of Dungeons & Dragons is a prime example. There are roles that are obvious to us: champion, shield bearer, scout, healer. But then there are easily 14 flavors of mystics, for lack of better term. Each represent a yet unknown technological capability. And so every player knew the way to best counter them with the scarcest weapons and armor. Devised in the second millennium of Terran years, they had predicted all sorts of abilities from ECM warfare. the hyperspace interdiction, to concerted energy weapons, all represented by these ancient mystic classes. Before they had even colonized their first extraterrestrial body, humans had already mastered anti-energy weapon tactics, anti-gravitics tactics, anti-plasma tactics. We still hear human soldiers today boast that they passed their reflex save when boasting about surviving a plasma barrage. Next, the second most worrying grand strategy. Let's not mince words. Any Terran who is adept at these games is at least as capable in logistics as our lowliest quartermaster general. These games sprawl continents, worlds, and frequently galaxies. Stellaris, now in its 70th release, now in the non-fiction section of the market. Historical human eras, from Imperator Rome 50 to the Victoria Age, Victoria 70, to their First and Second and Third World Wars, Hearts of Iron 56. These games, or as Stellaris players call practice, generally are a holistic empire simulator. Industries must be adjusted, manpower rearranged, resources exploited, bought or stolen, all to the end of supporting an empire. An empire that need men, material, and sometimes cannot be too precise about where it comes from. Political and social strife that can be depicted down to just one janitor who's about to rebel, and the player can make the decision. Do I make that janitor's life better by raising the minimum wages? Or do I think that the state has the resources to crush this inevitable proletarian rebellion? You have the choice to disappear his faction ruthlessly, should you choose so. In wartime, how much labor am I willing to force my POWs to do before my populace realizes I've abandoned the virtues we started the war with? 10 Segron posts 5 screenshots from Hearts of Iron deployment screens, political screen, unit screen, and resources. These players have largely already solved the minutiae of running an expansive wartime empire in digital form. Woe betide us who goad these humans into actually having one. Finally, real-time strategies. If ARPGs are to a truly skilled soldier, as tactical RPGs are to a sergeant, and grand strategy to a commander-in-chief, where the hell is real-time strategy land in the command structure? 10 Segron plays 20 minutes of competitive StarCraft. RTS Masters players average 400 actions per minute. They may command up to several hundred units at a time. Just in the StarCraft 71 championships in Sol System, the victory clocked in at 600 APM at peak. No longer a game of science fiction genre, as humans have power armor, have met physically attuned races, as well as hive mind swarms. These players are essentially experts at battalion-level command. They are masters of economy and attrition. They know exactly how many Marines they can sacrifice to an objective and still reap a net profit. How many tanks, how many aircraft. They're not even doing math anymore. They're just literally able to intuit the cost-benefit before contact is made. These wizards are able to see sheer military value in a half-second and know when to engage, when to retreat, and how to preserve the whole battalion, even if every man in it knew that they were dead. We know there are devouring swarms in the black. We know there are more physically attuned races that can manifest otherworldly abilities. StarCraft uses these as their primary opponents. That experience is not nothing. But these masters can issue 400 to 600 commands per minute. Give them enough live intel, and these battalions would run absolute circles around any command structure in the galaxy has ever seen. I have seen human gaming, and I am scared. 10 Segron shakily having another sip of his tea. End of story. Story number 2, Interviewing Human Shipbuilders, written by Thunder Salmon 45. Welcome back, everybody. Today our guest is a representative of General Spaceflight, the leading shipbuilder of the Human Federation spacecraft. Please welcome Charles Allen Dawson. Thank you. A pleasure to be here. Mr. Dawson, it was well known that humans borrowed their early spaceflight design from several other spacer species before settling on a human hallmark, so to speak. but you specifically have had a special hand in making one unique adaptation to human spacecraft that really allowed humans to excel. Care to enlighten our listeners? Thanks again. I am humbled that everyone likes to attribute the spatial atmosphere system to me, but there was a whole team of us involved in its development. Well, we certainly would like to express our appreciation to your team as well. Now, please, tell us a bit more about the spatial atmosphere system. What is it, and how does it work? Of course. I guess I'll go into a short history, if you don't mind. It'll put the entire system into a better perspective. Please go ahead. My listeners are always receptive to human histories and human stories. Humans, as you know, evolved as a predator on Earth some 100 to 200,000 cycles ago. We were not a clear apex predator species. We were preyed upon just as often as we preyed upon others. We developed relatively keen senses for Earth creatures that helped us both hunt prey and avoid becoming prey for others. Our senses became keen enough that even during sleep, our daily unconscious resting period, that any one of our senses could awaken us immediately to alert us of danger. Oh my, it sounds exhausting having all your senses working all the time like that. Your daily sleep sounds like a necessity to try and recoup some of the energy it must take. Yes, kind of. All creatures and even most plants on Earth need a rest period, though. Anyways, as I was saying, our senses are constantly keeping us aware of our surroundings, both consciously and unconsciously. What we didn't realize when we became an interplanetary species was how quiet and non-sensory most spacecraft are. Most early spacer humans kept music or air circulator systems running constantly to deal with the lack of regular sensory inputs. Really? Are you suggesting humans found other species' crafts were too quiet? Yes, exactly. We found that humans need sounds or vibrations or other stimuli constantly to keep ourselves at peak alertness and performance. The first non-human crafts that we adopted for us were small mescline cruisers. Obviously, our species were similar enough in size and shape that almost no modifications were needed. The only problem was that if humans didn't have something to distract us from how silent those ships were, we had mental problems. Please enlighten us. What were these early issues? Believe it or not, hallucinations. Our subconscious brains made up sounds and it made a good deal of our early pilots very superstitious that mescline ships were haunted. The only sounds you might naturally hear on a well-tuned mescline ship would be the capacitors charging during the high-energy maneuvers. Even that sound is only heard by a small percentage of humans anyway. So obviously, we needed something to meet the sensory needs of a human in space. And that was the special atmospheric system? You got it. The SAS system is tied directly to the ship's interior monitoring system and exterior sensor arrays. It makes the fully digital system on a spacecraft sound and feel like a mechanical system. It literally fools the pilot into receiving almost all information subconsciously. Subconsciously? How is that possible? Well, for example, we programmed the ships to play a deep droning sound permanently to indicate that the ship is traveling and the engine is operating. The faster the ship is traveling, the more intense the droning will be. It is very similar to old-style cars, vehicles that we had on Earth. They used combustion engines and were very loud when opened in high-energy operations. Even later energy-driven cars were still noisy because of Earth's atmosphere. Humans just got used to it and eventually needed it in space too. That is incredibly interesting, Mr. Dawson, but there is more to the SAS, isn't there? For example, you mentioned it also utilizes the ship's exterior sensor arrays. Yes, of course. There is an old saying, in space, no one can hear you scream. That was an old movie tagline, but rang true on many levels. Space was too quiet for humans. How early games and simulations all made space more dramatic by assuming the sounds of other ships around you, or space explosions during war actually booming. or even enemy laser fire making a pew-pew sounds. We simply made sure that anything happening outside the ship made a sound of some kind for the humans to hear. The sounds are projected to the human crew in a full surround system, so we can monitor actions without seeing their physical locations.
And somehow this made humans adapt easier to space?
Absolutely. Since making our ships act high-tech but sound low-tech, our crews were able to consistently become some of the highest-ranked pilots amongst known spaces species. Oddly enough, one more trick we used to use was to very lightly disable our inertial dampeners, just a fraction of a percent, so we could feel the ship's acceleration or feel the gravity fluctuations during turns and maneuvers. All of this was incorporated into the SAS. Humans apparently work better when overwhelmed with sensory stimulus.
I see. There you have it, listeners. Humans can attribute their success as a space species to keeping their planet-side distractions as part of their normal space routines. Once again, I would like to thank Mr. Charles Allen Dawson for sharing with us a small snippet of human design and history. We look forward to hopefully having you on again. And thank you, dear listener. Until next time, this is Miss Clean Romap on Outpost Podcast Radio.
End of story. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Vitmori, Terran on Air, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Red Panda 121, Leslie 517, Bushmaster 177, Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Lightsjock, Dragzoon WRE, Lord Azrakal, and Arcadian. Thank you.